Okay, I am going to talk about the state of the city address given by Mayor Patterson-Howard on 4/4/2023. I'm going to share my screen. It's going to be a PowerPoint presentation, maybe kind of dry. I hope not. I think the mayor covered a lot of ground. There's a link to I've got a link here. You can find it on Facebook. Here are the things I'm going to talk about. I changed the order around because I moved the IDA piece to the front because that's really important. I timestamp where things occur. Right out of the gate, this caught my attention. The mayor said, good government is about coming together in private and working to build consensus. This could be in response to criticisms that the city council and the mayor are too cozy. They work too much hand in glove. So I agree that consensus building is important. I vehemently disagree that good government is that consensus building done in private. I mean, nothing erodes trust more among voters, I think, than government officials who walk into private rooms and then walk out saying something, different than when they went in. It's important to be transparent in how decisions are made, when disagreement occurs, how those disagreements are resolved. That doesn't mean that people need to be uncivil about it and mean-spirited about it. It just means that things should be talked about openly. Let's talk about the IDA. The mayor started talking about it an hour and 27, almost 28 minutes into the presentation. She talked about this UTEP, which is it's about a 14, 15-page document that they revised that kind of outlines the policy for recapturing, maybe clawing back, and expectations when tax incentives are given to developers, or I guess anybody, maybe not just developers, but any business who's looking for some tax incentive or the city wants to incentivize. The mayor said this regarding UTEP, that limits the amount and the length of pilots, and we want to make sure that developers are paying their fair share as we residents have to do the same. Good to hear. There's an easy way to make sure of that, and that is don't give developers tax breaks. The Mount Vernon IDA has not provided any evidence that it can convert tax breaks given to developers into sustainable, well-paying jobs and net positive revenue generating economic activity. This is really the measure we should be looking at. It's not just the Mount Vernon IDA, it's IDAs in general. And then I go on also to say that if there was social validity, then developers would be crowing about it. It would be splashed all over the papers. I'd probably be getting things stuffed in my mailbox, claiming, pointing us to the studies that show that developers, when they get tax breaks, that converts into long-term social validity for the community. I think in evaluating mayoral candidates, this needs to be looked at very, very carefully. It's certainly on my radar. City finances. This comes at 2340 into the presentation. The mayor notes that we should have our bond rating sometime in 2024. They're working hard to get caught up on audits. The mayor mentioned this tax collection issue that the city has. I added here, this was in December, the comptroller pointed out to the community that there are 1,200 properties that owe about $25 million in outstanding property taxes. This traces back to the problems with the former comptroller, Reynolds, who seemed to sort of do everything she can to stop people from paying their taxes. I mean, she really made it hard. So yeah, you can't, if you do that, then you're going to run into problems, and we have problems. Now, there is a proposal, this one house budget. I don't know exactly how that would work, but that would flow $11.7 million to the school district. I don't know if it's a temporary measure until the city is able to collect the money and pay them, or if it's a bailout. If it's a bailout, that's troubling, because if the state bails out this tax piece, then what it might mean is the city decides not to try and collect it from people. And if that goes uncollected, it's a moral hazard. It really is. It's a problem. The mayor mentioned working to avoid massive foreclosure and potential gentrification. I don't know, that's a little bit worrying. I've heard that before. It seems a little bit like a scare tactic to me. We don't want massive foreclosure because then, the city will gentrify. We'll lose control of it to the gentrifiers. But fine, I noted that she said that. I thought it was interesting, so I put it up there. The mayor points out that the people who owe these taxes are our neighbors, relatives, friends, church members, co-workers, and importantly, senior citizens who might have serious economic hardship. I think that's important. I'm going to be a senior, in I think a decade or so. I'm I don't know when that starts, 62. I'm a few years away from it, but that worries me as well. I don't want to be in a position, if I'm here in Mount Vernon, where I find myself on a fixed income and feeling the pressure that I can't maintain my property, my home, and pay my tax bills, and feel like the government might force me out of my house because I can't pay the taxes that the government is demanding of me. That's a terrible way for anybody to have to end their life. You shouldn't have to worry about that. So I do think that we should find ways to help the seniors in our community who have economic hardships. I think that's important. I think these things need to be talked about openly, not, as the mayor said, in private, but it should be done in public. We're all payers into this system here, so we are all stakeholders in it. The mayor mentioned a financial empowerment center. Fine, I'm always worried about new little things popping up. The worry is that it adds more salaries to the city, which means before too long, if people get into sort of a tenure kind of scenario, then we own the long-term costs for life. It's only a bad thing if people are not really highly productive and bringing value to the job. A financial empowerment center could be very high value, so we'll have to see. She mentioned that. So the bottom line for this piece is we should help those with verified hardship. I'm worried about bonding, right, which is really just like a long-term loan, and the interest rates are not going to be favorable for us, to give tax amnesty. This was a word that the controller used in December, to people who maybe are just taking advantage of the situation with the former controller. They didn't pay their taxes, and so now they're like, no one's looking for it, or let them try and get it. So I just think we need to be very careful of that. 25 million is it's a lot of dough out there. 1,200 properties is a lot of properties, and we need to be careful of moral hazard while helping, our seniors who are in need. That's important. Continuing on with the city finances, the mayor talked about increasing sales tax revenues. And you can see what I did here. Here's the blue trend. This comes straight from the controller's office. I follow the sales tax information, so I just pull that straight from the controller's office. What I added here, just an inflation adjusted trend, just to kind of temper the excitement a little bit, because you might see this and be like, "Woo, look at that, it's great," But in inflation adjusted dollars, it's, in terms of purchasing power, things are pretty flat. Continuing with the finances, the assessed value, the mayor points out, is up $1.3 million. This is good, but I think that this is due to the ARPA purchases. We bought a lot. We bought the fire truck. Yeah, we bought a fire truck. We bought a lot of police cars, some DPW vehicles and equipment. All that stuff, I believe, would contribute to the assessed value of the city. So I bet we've purchased $1.3 million. That's my thinking. I mean, I may be wrong about that. I might be, but that was my initial thought, that those capital improvements that we made with the ARPA funding is why the assessed value is up. The next mayor talked about this revenue surplus of $9.4 million. That's due to coming in with fewer budgeted expenses and more budgeted revenue. The combined 1-2 punch, more revenue, less expenses, is a revenue surplus. Certainly it's better than a deficit, but it's a big variance from the budget. It's much better to have a good budget than to have big misses. What it means is that residents essentially are overtaxed, right? If we had a 2022 surplus of 9.4 million, and if we were able to budget more accurately, we would have had a lower tax rate increase in 2022. So we essentially paid more taxes than we needed to. Now, the mayor says that the surplus has gone to pay old debts and to try to reestablish a fund balance. Fine. The problem with that is that what you have to do is tell people up front. We need to know, like, look, if we miss on the budget and we have extra revenue, this is what we're going to do. So, the good news is it's better to have a surplus than a deficit. The bad news is we were overtaxed. Next, public safety. She introduced this idea of a new Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. It's going to be, I just threw this in there. My first thought was, the Lord of the Rings, one ring to rule them all. It kind of had this master ring feel to it, and she described it. She made a point of saying it's not going to replace, or it's not replacing or defunding the police. It's going to be like a master coordinating office. Not quite sure how that will go over, but it's going to be initially funded with $200,000 from the Urban Renewal Agency. Interesting thing about that was there was just a public hearing about sort of 8 high priority needs. I actually have a survey going out right now about that. I don't know. I tried to look and figure out where this would fit in there. So I don't know where this comes from in that, where this fits in there, this new Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. Like everything else, when you start a new office, like that economic one I just mentioned, you're probably going to be adding new people, hiring new people. When you hire new people, that's a commitment. And, you have to take on those commitments very carefully. Particularly when you're in difficult economic times, and we're certainly in those. The mayor also mentioned this organization, Cities United. I looked at the website. It's hard to say it, very wordy, a lot of kind of buzzwords, nifty phrases. I didn't see a lot of results. I think they've been around since 2011. If they had a lot of results, I would think they would be splashed right front and center, when you navigate to their website. Noble work, important work. Whether this is going to get the results we need, I don't know. The mayor mentioned Project Rise. This is that $2 million. I think the New York State I think it was like $28 million across, I don't know how many, 9 cities, something like that around the state. Mayor mentioned the police department wellness division. That's been around, I think, since last summer. Not entirely sure what kind of outcomes they're getting. The mayor mentioned a lot of visits that they've done, wellness checks. Mayor also mentioned for ambulances. It's good if it leads to better health. That's a good indicator of a community. If it doesn't, and we're stuck with the cost, then it's a bad decision. The mayor mentioned the Mount Vernon Hospital. I think she must have misspoke here. I couldn't quite figure it out. She said $327 million in Medicare flowed out of Mount Vernon on 2,400 hospital visits. So that's, by my calculation, $136,000 per visit. That just doesn't seem plausible to me. But I guess her point is, if we can keep that money going into the Mount Vernon Hospital, that will help stabilize and help us move towards making it a hospital that the community absolutely needs. But maybe that's the next big thing, is getting New York State to put a world-class public hospital in Mount Vernon. I mean, if Hochul can put $500 million into a stadium in Buffalo, in her hometown, then the sewers are a good start, absolutely. But come on, let's get a hospital. Infrastructure. So this was good. 100 roads paved to date, 60 scheduled for 2023. $163 million. I just mentioned this from the state and the county to fix the sewer systems. My worry is that is not a no strings attached amount of money, but it's tied to an expectation that the city will build affordable housing in the community, and that the mayor will give developers, tax incentives to do this through the IDA. I think that's overall a very risky scenario for us, given where we are right now. $9.5 million for road and sidewalk repairs, good. Obviously not enough, but that's good to keep that flowing there. The mayor mentioned tree planting, lead pipe abatement through the Board of Water Supply, and work on zombie homes. The mayor talked about government system improvements, going paperless, very good. This new open government program, which I believe is a tool for the building department, where it should help with the workflow process, moving permits through the business department, through the building department, and contractors can check online. This Granicus Legistar, which is just another program for just sort of managing the workflow process of legislation through the city. The mayor mentioned better human resource processes, all good system development. The mayor talked about economic development. She mentioned this Mount Vernon First. She mentioned there's going to be financial incentives to attract business. She didn't mention the IDA, but when I hear financial incentives, my mind immediately goes to the IDA. And for businesses, I think there might be a stronger argument than for developers. If we want to attract a company that builds solar panels to the city, this sort of green economy that she spoke about. The mayor mentioned Memorial Stadium. She said we have a new contract with an organization that does a fine wine series event in August. That's good. I noted the time there because that actually happened out of sequence with the economic development stuff. So I just threw that in there in case anybody wants to hear that. It was when she talked about Memorial Stadium. She mentioned a Starbucks and a hotel. I mean, personally, I don't really dig Starbucks. I don't know if anyone's been watching whatever the founder's name is. His name escapes me, but I think there's a photo op of the mayor with him. He's being raked over the coals by Bernie Sanders for anti-labor, anti-union practices. But in any case, the mayor mentioned maybe having a Starbucks here and a hotel. She also mentioned the cannabis industry, and I put in quotes, that we're onboarding and we're looking to expand. This is important. This came up maybe it was a year ago that this first appeared. I know the state is now moving with licenses. I just recently read in the Hudson Valley, there might be 5 to 9, somewhere like that. So yeah, I mean, the understanding at the time was that the community would be involved in discussions about this. So maybe during this election campaign, we need to bring that up, ask specifically about this and where elected officials stand and what this will look like for our community, because it is it's a big issue, and people have strong feelings about it both ways. So I think this kind of caught me by surprise that they're moving to onboard and looking to expand. I get the money piece of it. It can be a revenue generator. The mayor mentioned Mount Vernon as a destination. And I know that Dr. Larry Spruill, is a historian, a great book that he's got, I've read. He talks about the history of the city and maybe making it for history buffs who would want to come to the city, setting something up in the city, a museum and maybe a walking tour, things like that. Potentially that could make us a destination. The mayor also talked about the Level Up, the guaranteed income program. This is where it's financed through, I think, the additional ARPA money that the URA got. It's definitely coming through the URA. It's 200 people getting $500 a month for a year. So yada, whatever, 1.2 million. Is that right? $1.2 million. Yeah, that first payments are going to go out in April. This is potentially a dynamite program. Very interested in seeing how the results go here. So yeah, let's keep an eye on this. The mayor mentioned the comprehensive plan. This is the website. And no need to really talk much more about that. That's underway. There have been community meetings going on. The mayor talked about charter revision, that there's going to be a charter revision commission formed. This will be the first major revision to the city charter since 1972. She's going to start putting a group together in May to talk about that, or or whatever be the group that spearheads that. But anyway, hope this is helpful.